just got their meter, is that correct? So we're gonna start net metering.
Thank you.
So in September of last year, the select board charged our committee with studying community power for Lyme. And this comes about because through the statute, through New Hampshire statute, towns are allowed to aggregate retail electric customers as necessary to provide such customers access to competitive markets for supplies of electricity and related energy services. So this is a state law that was passed some time ago, and it provided for community power as a program for New Hampshire. Let's see. So what is community power? Let me know if you guys think I'm going too fast or anything. It's an aggregation of all the electricity consumers in the town or county. And for Lyme, that is the customers served by Eversource or New Hampshire Electric Co-op. Those are the two utilities that serve Lyme. So all of the customers, all of those customers can become an aggregation. Lyme Community Power will allow Lyme to purchase electricity in a competitive market through a relationship with the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. And we'll talk more about that coming up. In fact, I should introduce Andrew Hatch is here from the Community Power Coalition, and he'll be helping to answer questions later.
Hey, Andrew.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Community Power will allow the town to set electric supply rates and services for customers who choose to participate. Community Power also empowers the town to work with utilities on local energy infrastructure upgrades. So as a community power aggregation, we have some power to incentivize the utilities, let's put it that way, to improve infrastructure. All right. Currently, the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire is made up of, Community Power has launched in these towns. It's approved for launch in these towns, and these are the towns that are planning it, hoping to launch soon.
So I can bring you an update if you like, James.
Yeah, sure.
Because now the map looks like this. We inducted our 50th member last week at the Board of Directors, and another 3 are on deck. So I'm not sure what iteration of that map is, but every time we publish something, it's immediately out of date. And I can speak to you a little bit more about where we are in that process later on.
But it's also serving more than 250,000 customers.
That's actually not the case. Right now, we're serving 80,000 customers on the launch communities. We have over 25% of the population of New Hampshire represented by the full membership in its different categories.
All right. So, what are the benefits? Main point is to secure cheaper rates. So Lyme Community Power will not launch unless it can provide lower rates than the default suppliers, Eversource and New Hampshire Electric Co-op. So we're not going to launch this program unless we know that we can offer lower rates than the current default rates from the utility. The other benefit, to choose more sustainable sources. So if Lyme Community Power passes and we launch, we'll be able to provide a menu of options for electrical supply. So you can get the cheapest one, you can pay a little more for a certain percentage of renewable power, or you might pay even more in your rate to get 100% renewable power.
Renewable.
So
This is all renewable, James?
not all of it. But there's, we'll get more into the
Okay.
details a little bit. So the another benefit is helping Lyme meet its goal of 100% renewable energy use by 2030. A big point of this is to gain control over our electrical supply. Currently, the utilities purchase power for us, but we have the ability to purchase it ourselves. You can do that as an individual, in fact. You can go online and choose a different supplier of your electricity. If we do this as a town, first of all, most electrical users don't go and change their default supplier or choose their suppliers. But if we do this as a town, we have more buying power, basically. We can get a lower rate. And if, joining up with CPC&H, there's a large body of customers that also increases the buying power. The other important thing, which I think we'll mention later, is the utilities can only buy power twice a year by regulation. But as a community power entity, we can buy power throughout the year, right, at any time, so, or more or less at any time. So that makes our ability to get power cheaper even greater. Let's see. All right, what does it mean for customers if we adopt this? So if we adopt community power, all electrical customers in Lyme will be enrolled automatically, though they can choose to opt out. So we will notify the customers at least 30 days before we launch that customers will be enrolled into community power, and at that time they have the option to opt out, which is a relatively simple process, right? It's like going to a website and clicking a button.
And there's also an 800 number that's staffed by an experienced call center.
Yeah, so it's very easy to opt out. In that notification, obviously there'll be information about what the rates will be, and what your options will be in comparison to what the utilities are offering. So it'll be clear what people are getting into. And it's voluntary. Customers who get their electricity from an alternate supplier will have to opt in. So you won't be automatically enrolled if you already have, if you've already chosen a different supplier than the utilities, the default supplier. Like in my case, a while ago, I signed up for Direct Energy, so I won't automatically be enrolled. I'll have to opt in when it's right for me. So now let's see, did I continue this? Before I go on, I thought I had updated this, but it's important to say that customers, there's a lot of Lyme customers who have solar and are net metering right now. And net metering customers will also not be automatically enrolled because Community Power Coalition does not have the ability to provide net metering service right now, but it is the intent that that will take place. The reason it's not has to do with technical issues that the utilities have basically presented. I don't want to get too deep into that because it's very complicated. But suffice to say that at launch time, net metering customers will not be automatically enrolled. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't support this endeavor, because eventually solar customers will be able to join community power, and the community power will be able to offer more products, better products than the utility has at this time. Like the utility doesn't allow you to, I'm I'm not very good with all the language, but like the time,
Time of use rate.
time of use rates, right? You can't get that now with users, but this is something that the Community Power Coalition intends to introduce.
James, can you just explain what net metering is?
Yeah, just so net metering, for those that don't know, is if you have solar on your house, you're generating electricity for yourself, but during the day, you're likely generating more electricity than you're using. So that electricity that you're producing is sent back into the grid. In effect, your meter is running backwards, right? So when you're pulling power off the grid, your meter's running a certain way. When you start producing more than you're taking, that meter reverses and starts sending the power into the grid. So, and you get reimbursed for the power that you're putting back into the grid. Not the full amount, not the full amount that it costs you to get power from the grid, but you are putting it back in, so, and you get money back. And there's a lot of, it's a complicated thing. There's special meters and all that, and the utilities have just been behind in their ability to provide all the necessary data to CPC&H in order for community power to take advantage of the net metering service. But the attention is there, and hopefully soon. So, here's an example of what customers will be presented with. This is the Plainfield had sent out to their customers for August to January. So EverSource, their suppliers are EverSource and Liberty, or their utilities are, and they were offering 12.2 cents kilowatt hour. This is the lowest, Granite basically call it, that was the lowest rate, which is not 2 cents cheaper, but and then they had these options if you wanted to pay a little more to get greener power. So you could go up to 50%, they call it clean energy, and still be within the range of what EverSource and Liberty were offering for rates.
And interestingly enough, James, I discovered in some research for customers of Liberty that in fact their rate was 12.6 cents. They just quietly changed that and didn't publish it.
A typo.
I know, shocker, isn't it?
But that's wonderful.
So another thing this shows you is 23.4% renewable content is required. What is the term that's called?
It's the RPS, the Renewable Portfolio Standard.
Renewable Portfolio Standard that's required of all of the utilities in New Hampshire, which is pretty low, right? In 2023, in the 21st century, we're only requiring utilities to provide 23.4% renewable power. This is another reason for community power. As communities around the state are proving, we want more. We want to get more renewable power. We don't want to rely on the utilities to always go with the lowest. And New Hampshire has been slow policy-wise in terms of requiring a higher renewable portfolio. So this is communities are saying, we want more renewable content in our electrical supply. So this gives us an opportunity to do that.
James?
Yes.
It's hard for the camera to pick up the those numbers. Could you tick them off, starting with the EverSource and Liberty numbers, and just how many cents per kilowatt hour?
So Liberty is at, well, I understand 12.6 cents per kilowatt. Eversource was also 12.6. The default for CPCNH was 10.9 cents per kilowatt hour. You could choose Granite Plus, which is 33% renewable power at 11.3 cents. You could choose 50% renewable at 12.3 cents, or you could choose 100% renewable and pay 15.2 cents.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe that I'm paying 15, around that for direct energy right now. That's fluctuated some. When I signed up with direct energy, the cost of electricity was going up, and if people remember last year, Eversource, it was like 22 cents or something, so they fluctuate a lot, obviously. And again, that makes, it's important to understand how the utilities need to purchase power only twice a year, where CPCNH can purchase it whenever it's lowest. For those that don't quite understand, what we're talking about with community power is just the electrical supply, just the electricity that comes through the lines. And your bill is, if you look at your electric bill, you see that it's divided into two sections, supply and delivery. Delivery is what the utilities will continue to provide, and that is the poles, the lines, whatever infrastructure is used to get the electricity to you. All community power is dealing with is the supply part.
So down at the bottom right, that's clearly your bill, because it says direct energy service.
There you go, you got me.
So,
You see what I'm paying, and I paid even more this month, believe it or not.
so when your Eversource bill comes through and Lyme has launched, it would just say your electric supplier is Lyme Community Power.
Right, okay,
So, on the previous slide,
yeah,
where you had the rates and what a typical household will pay was like less than, each one was less than $100.
yeah.
And this is more like our bill.
Right. Right.
So what is that based on?
Oh, those,
The figures.
All the figures are based upon a national average of a consumption of 600 kilowatt hours per month is a average per household, 7,200 per year. It's just a sort of standard number. That's
So they have no lights or anything?
I could be a wise guy, but I'm.
$60 savings, not
Yeah.
the full bill.
that's right, yeah,
They've probably got lots of fossil fuels at home.
Yes.
yeah.
James, just an observation, when you're describing this program to the town broadly, not the people in this room who probably are more informed, the notion of separating delivery from supply, many people are not aware of that
Right.
distinction, and they figure Eversource is my supplier. And when you come and tell them they can purchase the power, the supply part from other providers and still be an Eversource customer, that's totally new to people and
Yes, yeah.
requires some explanation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it does, but in the end, it's fairly simple once you grasp it, right? That your electricity comes into, has to get to you, but the electricity itself is separate from the infrastructure that carries it. So,
We're partly used to the old days of telephone service where the two things were combined. You got, the same company owned the poles and provided the current on the line. So the idea of separating them is a new concept to a lot of us.
Right, right.
And I think maybe the entry point for many people is, in a storm, who's gonna fix my electricity?
Right.
And that will still be Eversource or New Hampshire Electric Co-op. James and I are not gonna go out in the middle of the storm to fix the wire, so I think that may be a place to start this discussion.
Those guys are pretty cheerful, though. I don't know if you've ever At least I found.
Yeah.
The guys that come out to fix the lines, have gone out and talked to them on storms. And they're pretty hardy guys and they're
Yeah.
pretty, gals, and they're pretty cheerful as they go about it.
And I think another way to think about it, same concept is, there's only gonna be one wire to your house.
Mhm.
And so, there's gonna be one company that's gonna run all the wires, and then who puts the electricity into the wires is up for you to pick.
Right. And I believe this came about, you know, by some of the deregulation that happened a while ago in New Hampshire, where we were able to choose. We've been able to choose our own suppliers for a while, but it used to be a pretty convoluted process to do it. You had to go to like 3 different websites to figure out what you were doing. I think they've streamlined it some so that individuals can do this. But there's real benefit to the community power in that you're getting everybody online and choosing their supplier.
The one point to make is that the supply side, as supplied by Eversource or New Hampshire Electric Cooperative, is just a pass-through. They don't make any profit on the supply side. It's the delivery side where they continue to make profit, and that's by statute. They're not allowed to profit off the supply.
Right, that's important. And it's important to understand why Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire is a nonprofit. They're not gonna, as community power, we're not gonna profit off of supplying the power. It's just the way, but the utilities don't have an incentive therefore to find innovative products for getting supplies. Okay, community power is about choice. So as we've already mentioned, every electric customer in New Hampshire can choose their electric supply. Most customers use the default, others have gone online and shopped for an alternate. Lyme Community Power will become the default electrical supply for Lyme customers. However, every customer will be able to opt out of the program anytime they want to choose a different one. And if they do, when you do opt out, you go back to the default supplier, which is your utility, either Eversource or New Hampshire Electric Co-op. If the town adopts Lyme Community Power, the select board, with the help of our committee and the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire, will set a series of electric supply rates for Lyme customers. So it has to be the town governing body is the body that sets gives the final word on what the rates will be. And they'll be, the rates will be based on the cost of the supply provided by CPCNH, who shops the electrical supply market on our behalf. Does a lot more than that. Basically manages the community power program for us. So opt in, opt out. Okay. Again, you want to make it clear that the customers of the utilities are enrolled by default, and they must opt out if they choose not to participate. Customers with alternate suppliers are not enrolled, must opt in when they are ready. Like in many cases, the alternate suppliers have a contract. Like I signed up for, I think it was a 3-year contract, and so I'll just wait till that's done and then opt in. Net metered customers are not enrolled automatically, as I described before. So there's technical issues that are preventing it, but the intention is that CPCNH and Lyme Community Power will be able to provide net metering service in the future. How will this affect the town budget? It won't. So under the statute, no taxes can be used to fund this program. So a portion of what the customers pay for electrical supply goes to sustaining the program, basically. And customers who opt out do not pay for any aspect of it. that's by statute. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. How is Community Power of New Hampshire funded? Where,
Through the supply rates.
Yeah.
okay.
So Eversource and the co-op will continue to do the billing, but the piece that's the energy service will then flow back to the coalition. And in that 10.9 cent rate, there's the cost of procuring the power, the cost of managing the coalition, the staff folks, and then the piece that would be a profit for a for-profit corporation is called community reserves. And those reserves accrue over time. They are tracked by community, but they are used as a means to build up the reserves of the coalition and to get the credit ratings that we need. Over time, our target is to reach 120 days of cash on hand, which I assure you is a tremendously large amount of money. And by doing so, it will give us that credit rating that we can get into some very interesting opportunities to fund innovative programs, and most importantly, maintain rate stability and ensure that we are able to procure power at the most optimum level. And I would just say, as a non-profit government instrumentality, with a bit of a mouthful, we are subject to right to know laws. We have full transparency. If you go to cpcnh.org today, you'll see the 2023 budgets. We're right in budget season for 24 right now. Results will be shared, and in fact I can talk to some of the actual numbers that we're pleased to be able to share now. This for a long time was a concept that we were hoping people would buy into. Today we have Jonathan Chaffee here, who's one of our ambassadors from the city of Lebanon, one of our launch communities and one of the thought leaders of the coalition. So please feel free to get into the details of that. But I'm delighted to be here to report that this year our goals of achieving over $50 million worth of revenue just in this short period of launch are going to be achieved, and we're looking to at least double that in 2024. So this is a very significant endeavor, and being able to turn those revenues from funding the profit motives of others to helping the coalition members is a very exciting opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that, while I'm paying Direct Energy, they're a profit company, and they might be giving me a good rate now, but who knows when my 3-year contract is up, if I'm not paying attention, they could double my rate, The Community Power Coalition and, Community Power in general is a nonprofit. It's transparent, the idea is to serve the customers and to provide stable power going forward, hopefully as renewable power. All right, so what exactly will we be voting on in March? This is the warrant article we're hoping to have on the warrant, basically to see if the town will vote to adopt Lyme Community Power Electric Aggregation Plan, finalized by the Electrical Aggregation Committee, and to further authorize the select board to develop and implement Lyme Community Power and take all action in furtherance thereof pursuant to the New Hampshire statute, section 53E. So the Electrical Aggregation Plan is the thing that we're voting on. It's required by the statute, and it's the document that describes Lyme Community Power and sets the rules that govern its management. And I have a copy of it here, and there's a copy of it available on the town website. This is mostly what we've been working on. This is it's a template that's provided by CPCNH, and we go through and make sure that it works for us as a town. And we've been fortunate that David Kahn on the select board has, given a very close reading and asked some, tough questions that we've brought back to CPCNH, and it's been a process. I think we have a good plan right now, so. All right, I think that's the end of my slideshow. Is there anybody on the committee that wants to offer anything additional right now?
How many staff do you have?
Yeah, I can certainly speak to the
Yeah, why don't we
coalition.
let Andrew take over the floor a little bit and talk some more about it?
One of the things I get asked a lot is about, the cost of getting started before you've even launched community power. And there are no costs to the town other than minimal expenses to perhaps have legal counsel review documentation and things like that. How does that happen? Well, the coalition accrues the costs of launch and the collateral, the information that goes out to customers and potential customers, and that then is accounted for under each community, and over 3 to 5 years, those costs are sort of reimbursed to the coalition. So again, no out-of-pocket expenses to the town. This is a postcard I'll leave to you. This is a generic postcard that just talks about community power. The famous map, already out of date, but the rest of it is good information. There's a QR code for those of you up with these things that will take you to the frequently asked questions. There's 25 of them at least. They get into a lot of the weeds about what is renewable power, what is net metering, what are we doing with all of this stuff. And if you can't find it there, you can go to the info@cpcnh.org, and I'm at the other end, so I'll answer your email.
How big a staff is it?
That's why I was being evasive on that. Because it all ends on me.
It's just you?
No, I'm the outreach coordinator, and I report to the Director of Member Services, who is a staff member. We hired a CEO earlier this year, Brian Cownan. He was in charge of innovative programs at the New Hampshire Electric Co-op, and before that had a long career in power procurement, both in New Hampshire and over the border in Vermont. We've also hired a Director of Legislative and Regulatory Affairs, because we want to have a voice at the State House to be able to lobby and to take on some of the utilities in terms of their dragging their feet, in terms of being able to bring these programs to marketplace. We talked about net metering. Net metering is not that the coalition has been singled out for special treatment. No third-party provider can offer net metered customers service right now because that data has been unavailable from the utilities. The law that we were discussing, 53E, was launched put into law in 2019. It was amended thereafter to allow it to be an opt-out program, which is the key to success here. But there's been, 4 years that this conversation has been going on, and the utilities have still not responded and got their act together in terms of providing this information. We had a very interesting breakthrough where the Public Utilities Commission earlier this year found in favor of the coalition's position and instructed the utilities to act. It's not going to be something that's going to be resolved overnight. What I'm asked all the time is, when will this be resolved? I can't give you a firm answer. The conversation is, we're hoping for months rather than years. It's that sort of thing. I don't know if you're party to any more information than that, Jonathan. Clifton Below, the Assistant Mayor of Lebanon, and an ex-Public Utilities Commissioner and an ex-State Representative and State Senator, is the architect of all of this in the law, and he has gotten very engaged immediately to front this up and to expedite this as fast as possible. But it's a complicated issue that's been a problem for a long time. Yes, sir.
As a net metered customer of Eversource, my understanding is the data that they're not giving you is how much we are producing at our property.
Right.
So you can tell how much I'm consuming, but you can't tell how much I'm producing, and therefore you
Right.
don't have the wherewithal to give me
Yeah.
credit for that.
That's essentially the point. And the other thing, and I hope you will have the chance to review the energy aggregation plan, it's fun reading. But all kidding apart, it is the cornerstone of this. And I don't want to be trite or flippant about the importance of local control. The coalition is here to support local communities. This will be Lyme Community Power, funded by, run through the Coalition of New Hampshire. But it's Lyme, and Lyme will drive the bus in terms of the thought process. Some of these 50 communities have, regrettably, certainly at a select board level, a very dim view of renewable energy and clean energy and all those things. And they just want to look at this as a means to be able to save money for their residents. And as far as the coalition's concerned, that's all good. I was delighted to see that you, as a community, has also passed a resolution to drive towards 100% renewables. One of the things that your Energy Aggregation Committee will be charged with once the vote has authorized the move forward is at what are those levels you might want to launch at. As James said, the first requirement will be that the coalition can offer rates that are lower than those of your utilities. But there is an option that has been taken by some of the neighbours, certainly by Hanover, Plainfield, and also I believe Peterborough as the third one in the launch communities, that decided to make the default rate for their community what we call Granite Plus, so the 33%. It gets people to that next level automatically, and then they have to opt down to go to the lower rate. It's a conversation that you need to have, and I often say to communities, don't get ahead of yourself here, but if you have made a resolution as a town to pursue 100% renewables, then I think it's a very serious consideration for Lyme. Those positions that I've just mentioned are the ones that have been hired. We have authorization to hire for other positions in power procurement. We haven't yet been successful at finding exactly the right people, but those will be hired. It's the intention of the coalition to remain a lean organization.
Great.
We are staffed because we now have got launch communities, but this all started with volunteers. The board is 20 strong. That was capped this year because we couldn't just have every single member have a representative on board. It would become unwieldy. But every member community has a vote. So Lyme's vote is as important as a large city. That's something also to bear in mind. I think it's a very positive thing. And it's encouraged that the more engaged communities do have delegates that go to the member meetings, do sit on boards. We have 7, 8 boards, finance, risk management, member services, and on and on. All of those, again, are volunteers and members of the communities that we serve. The expertise within that is tremendous. We've got lots of municipal expertise, lots of managers of municipalities, but also people who are veterans of the utilities and the power industry. People who sit on risk management have got tremendous knowledge. Today's a big day. Eversource is going to publish their rates. And they are a public thing. James mentioned before, I mean, a lot of people are puzzled by this because, as the gentleman said earlier, most people just pay their bill. As long as the lights come on when you turn the switch and the bill doesn't, put you in the poorhouse, we're all good. And that's about as far as we've got. But for over 30 years, the deregulation of the utilities has meant there is no profit motive for the utilities to procure power. The word default was intended to be a backstop, the last thing that would happen if you moved to town and you wanted the lights on and you called Eversource. They would put you on default power, but they were expecting that as soon as you got your act together, you go off to a direct energy or another third party. It hasn't happened. We're all a bit busy doing other things, and I understand that entirely. So this whole concept of default power has been a failure, if you will, because over 90% of the residential population have never gone to a third party. Many commercial businesses have, because they use more power on average, and there's a lot more vendors servicing those folks. James mentioned direct energy.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that, just that, you know, the timing is good, because, you know, I would guess that all of us are starting to use a lot more electricity now. Installing heat pumps, getting, you know, maybe electric cars, all these things, you know, this is where electricity is where we're gonna be paying for our energy. So the ability to get better control of the supply is, you know, it's like, this is the time to do it. You wanna say something?
Yeah, Andrew, thank you. I'm seeing that this is a hearing, and given that you have sat before many towns, can you share with us, to offer balance to the criticisms that people have to the coalition? Why? What are the reasons not to, the reasons that people make not to participate in a community power effort? Can you share with us what some people level against the coalition or against community power programs?
Well, it's a great question, and I hate to sort of say it's a tough thing to answer, because so many people conclude after showing objections, I don't think they're necessarily criticisms or trying to find the aha moment.
Mm-hmm.
You get some of the most conservative people, this is a no-brainer. And to my thinking, it certainly is in that category. I think a lot of the concern a year ago was, well, this sounds too good to be true. How can it be this easy? How can the utilities have not made all this money? You know, and a lot of the answers are in that law that's been in existence for many years, but really hasn't achieved its goals of giving us more independence. So I wish I had a better answer to that question here today. I feel that what we have achieved in 2023 already is just testament to the fact that everything that was envisaged in developing the law and to moving forward and creating the coalition is coming to pass. But we're only really getting started, and that's what really is exciting. These reserves I spoke about, we've got to walk before we can run. But once we've got to a point of having that level of stability, what those reserves can ultimately do in the future is very much in the conversation of some of the launch communities. And again, I think Jonathan, you know, is a great example of a volunteer. I've worked with Jonathan for 5 years now and got to know him very well. Hugely passionate, very concerned about folks, you know, on low income and things like that. And what can we do to help them as this evolves? And I think this is a lot of the ideas that are going out there, but it's not just one homogenous thing that the coalition says we do this, the coalition. It's the communities within the coalition that drive that forward.
I just want to follow up. I want to press just a little bit on this. We have heard that some folks are concerned with that not necessarily here in Lyme, but that some folks have been concerned that CPCNH could fold,
Mm-hmm.
or that there could be some organizational dissolution of CPCNH that would threaten something that we do with Lyme Community Power.
Right.
What does CPCNH say to that? How can you assuage those concerns? Are they valid, or are we in a different state now than we were when those comments were made, you know, a year ago?
Well, they're all valid. I mean, there is no absolute certainty in the future for any of us, other than the death and the taxes. But my point to you was just that a lot of things that we were hoping were going to play out have already. I get asked a lot, well, what happens if our group decides to exit the coalition? And I think at this point, I just want to make it very clear that the coalition is a vehicle to launch community power. But the law does not say you launch community power through the coalition of New Hampshire. You can launch it in different ways. You could do it all on your own. You could go through a third-party broker. You could go through a non-profit such as the coalition. So there are different vehicles, and what this document is doing, and what we're helping you to author, actually does not commit you to going through the coalition, nor does your warrant article actually commit the town of Lyme to launch community power. you are authorizing your Board of Selectmen to do that at their discretion at a time in the future, if that is the case. The exit strategy goes back to these accrued reserves, and it's very important you will understand this. If you imagine a pie, the launch communities have a slice of these reserves that are accruing over time. They are collectively used by the coalition and its membership to do all the things I mentioned before. But they are assigned community by community. And within the documentation of the launching process, the policies and procedures and cost-sharing agreements that would have to be signed by your select board in order to launch community power, is very clearly articulated a couple of important things. The first thing is there is a legal ring fence around the finances of the town of Lyme. There can be no way that by launching community power, the town of Lyme takes on any liability for this, point one. Point two is, at any time if the town of Lyme decided to exit the Community Power Coalition, there are rules around a orderly exit. We procure power on your behalf. You will have a representative. It's going to happen for these blue communities very soon. This month, the folks that are responsible parties for these blue communities will be having a call just after the holidays. Hopefully they won't have too much turkey and their tryptophan won't have kicked in, because they're going to be asked to make some very important decisions. Go, no go. Once you go, we go procure power. We haven't gotten into some of the conversations. What we've done so far for Lyme is to get a broad-based picture of how many folks are on default power and how many are on third-party supply, and how much power over a year they consume. That is both the residential and the small commercial customers. That math is what we base power procurement numbers on. So we buy power for Lyme, and as James said, it's bought in contracts over time. So there's a chunk of money that's assigned to Lyme. If you just sort of like walked out the door and said, thanks very much, we would be burdened with a surplus of power, and that would burden other members. So you can't just walk out the door. But net of an orderly exit, there will be a balance of these reserves, and they will be at the discretion of the town of Lyme's Board of Selectmen to decide what they want to do with it.
James, what were you, excuse me, James, you had a comment about who has the power to take this or something?
Oh, well, I did want to make which Andrew has made, is that, you know, we can get out of this, right? Like, if something happens to CPC&H, you know, it turns out that, you know, somebody's stealing money or whatever, you know, the point is, you know, we can get out at any time. And there are some rules about the exit, but you know, it's not like we're locked in heavily. The other point I wanted to make was what came up is, you know, sort of what are the risks, right? Well, one of the risks is that the law changes, right? That you know, the legislature and the governor decide that you know, they want to, you know, help out the utilities even more than they have been for the last, you know, decades, right? Well, that's a risk, but I would say that by having community power, we're creating, you know, some more informed voters, right? We're saying that, you know, if there's a risk put to this entity that has made their power cheaper and greener, it's possible that that citizens will actually be interested in maintaining it. So,
Can I make a point too also? Lyme's put a lot of effort into getting solar onto a lot of buildings and into individual hands, but the nature of solar power for individuals tends to favor people who have more resources.
True.
Because they're rather expensive to install. This community power means that everybody in town can participate in the effort towards being more renewable at a better price. So it's empowering all members of the community to participate in renewable energy programs.
I have two more questions for Andrew. Oh, sorry, please.
I wanted to put my oar in here. about the question about what questions people ask about this. And I think the main one that I've encountered is incredulity. How can community power continue to offer rates that are cheaper than the utility offered? And the key to that is the coalition. In Massachusetts, they for years have done community aggregation, municipal aggregation they call it. And the model is much simpler than that in New Hampshire, much less sophisticated, because each individual select board is on the hook for going out and purchasing power from a third-party supplier for the people in that town. So, and it's all balkanized. Every town is on a different schedule, so every select board is burdened with the administration of this and choosing power supplier and choosing a rate. And it often happens that rate then is more than the utilities. So people then opt out and they go back to the utility, and then they come back when the rates are better. They come back. So it's really it doesn't work very well. Let me just continue to the advantage of the coalition. The coalition has the advantage that it can purchase power on a regular basis, so it can go out and buy a month of power, a month of power, a month of power, a portfolio. It can go to the wholesale market. And the way power purchase works is if you're an aggregation in Massachusetts, you buy a year's worth of power. And because the power market is so variable, there's an insurance hedge that goes with a year's power, and it's higher the longer the term is. And so if you're buying power every 6 months, you're almost guaranteed to be paying more for the power than if you buy it every 2 months, the way the coalition does. So there probably are circumstances under which the coalition price for power might be slightly higher than the utility price, but that's what the reserves are for, to be able to smooth that out and not have to raise the rates immediately and then fix it in a few months. So I don't know, I can't predict if ever the coalition rate might be higher than the utility rate, but the odds are pretty good. It's been working pretty well so far.
And we'll know very soon. The third rate cycle will be announced by or before the 2nd of January. As I said today, Eversource is going to announce its rates. I know that certainly Unitil and Liberty have already come up with some numbers, and they are lower. They're a lot lower than they were last year. There is no reason to think that the coalition's work is causing the utilities to rethink their rates.
I wanted to jump in quick and just say, we're getting close to 10, so I wanted to concentrate on questions, answering questions. Did you have one more?
I defer to the floor.
Okay. We do have these FAQ documents, which get a little more into the weeds on questions, but go ahead, you had.
This is an incredibly basic question. When Eversource doubled their rates, the scuttlebutt was, well, it's because we don't have renewable resources. And so, they're burning coal, they're doing this, doing that. Meanwhile, in Vermont, they said, well, our rates are good because we're using renewable resources. And yet, according to that chart, the renewables are more expensive than the fossil fuels. Can you elucidate?
That's one of those, that sounds like an easy question, and there's a very, complex response to that.
There is a whiteboard.
Clean it off, I need it all. No, I mean, all kidding apart, I think what you're seeing in terms of the 100% renewable power, why isn't that cheaper than the default rate? I'd like to say, with the way that we're setting this up, we fully intend it will be sometime. But the way that the power mix and the grid is managed through the ISO New England, the role that baseload has, the lack of the utilities innovation to be able to leverage the use of renewables that, if you're going to take a negative position, are unreliable, they're not base load. There's a lot of this conversation that is transition at the moment, and I think the best answer in respect to the limited time we have is that the coalition's long-term goals are to bring the benefits and the lack of expense of renewables to the market in the most expeditious way. And so watch that space.
I think there's some, it's just a different take on the same question, is that the non-renewable plants and the renewable plants, and the non-renewable plants both have the capital, embedded capital cost, and the variable fuel and operating costs, and that can just go up and down like crazy, whereas the renewable plants basically have perhaps a higher capital cost, but there's no operating, and the operating cost is really minimal. And so,
And of course, the unspoken subsidies of the fossil fuel industry.
right.
Yep. Unfortunately, the renewable power that's being offered by the coalition now is RECs. It's renewable energy credits. They're first-class renewable energy credits. They're renewable power that's bought within New England, but that costs a little bit more, and it's not what we hope to get to, which is distributed generation and being able to actually buy real renewable power that's within New Hampshire, within New England, so.
And as renewable power continues, the capital costs go down, operating costs are very minimal.
And the benefit of the coalition is that it can offer a contract which can allow renewable power to be developed. In California, the aggregations have offered contracts to offshore power and been pretty advanced in developing renewable power within their domains, and we hope to do that in New Hampshire.
And just follow, is there enough capacity in renewable power right now? Let's say the whole state wanted to go into renewable. Is there enough capacity to do that, or do they have to build more dams or?
Clearly, there is not enough capacity, and as we spoke before, the future is more electric, not less.
Right.
Really?
I have a question for you, Andrew. If the coalition is one offering for this framework, and say there's a broker that can do the same, what's the sell to the town of Lyme for working with CPC&H over a competitive, a comparable entity?
A lot of the added value, a lot of the vision that's in here in terms of the future and what you will choose to do with the reserves, both as a group and also individually as a community. I don't think they're offering you any reserves. I don't think they're offering you any transparency in terms of profit. I think they are offering you potentially an extended term, and I often equate that with a gamble. I'm not sure if the town wants to gamble with its community members to say, maybe over 30 months we'll save money at this whatever rate per kilowatt hour, and maybe we won't. It's certainly not something that's guaranteed. The choice that the coalition has taken to launch its rates on the same cycle as the utilities is partly with that in mind, that we can and will be transparent in terms of how much folks can save money. But don't forget, underpinning that is also those reserves that are being accrued at the same time. And that's a very, very important thing to take away today.
So the rates for community power change throughout the year, is that right?
The rates for community power only change once every 6 months. So the rates will be published in January, which will become effective February the 1st in lockstep with the utilities.
So like my direct energy rate, I'm locked in for 3 years, because I was afraid that it was always going up. So now I'm paying a little more than.
And again, I mean,
That's the gamble.
There are good players in that market and not so good players. A lot of folks received solicitations after the Eversource 22-cent rates. They bought in good faith. They didn't read the small print. 6 months later, their rates have gone up. It's an unfortunate, thank you. It's an unfortunate fact of life that, buyer beware. The coalition being transparent will never start playing those games.
Yeah, there was mailers going out with a offer of a $200 Visa card.
Yeah, and the teaser rate, that teaser,
Yeah.
I know the one you're talking about, I
Yeah.
got a briefcase over there, it really gets under my skin.
Yep.
Because it's playing on probably the people that can A, least afford it,
Right.
and B, don't necessarily have the information to hand. You've always been able to go, you can go to the New Hampshire Department of Energy website today, the coalition's rates are published there along with all of the other direct suppliers. You can shop around, definitely, but people tend to either not to have done so, or like myself, I tried it in the early tens, and I went with, and over time, I don't think I lost a large amount of money, but I didn't gain anything, and I just never renewed it. It's a bit blah, to be quite honest. And that's because they're not really interested in your well-being, it's the profit motive to stay in business.
Wish I'd known that sooner.
So I would say, if we could wrap up, and if there's any more questions though, we're happy to,
Happy to stay and answer them.
stay and answer. We do have a couple things as a committee to work on after this, so.
I do have a question. Sorry. So this is all focused on the supply. Is there anything with community power that's ever going to look at more like the delivery? So, and I'm not saying like own the wires and the meters and things like that. I'm saying more, taking more responsibility to have more reliability. So, we obviously live in a rural community, people, outages, they can go on for days. So, maybe if you're in Manchester, that's not gonna exist. Here, it's a problem, right? Like where, stuff goes out. So I don't, I'm like, it's just like kind of a wonder of mine. Is that somewhere where community power can go eventually, where more thought can be put into reliability? And I'm not, I'm kind of, I look over at Vermont and they like started to take actions where it is, burying power lines or, putting in battery, backup or something like that. So that's, more of a question that I have, is that, is there any path for that, for community power? Or is it just strictly playing the cheaper rate, green power, mix?
Well, going back to those accruing reserves, and Jonathan mentioned the longest serving community power aggregations are in California, in Marin County. They've been going for 20 years. They have $1.2 billion in reserves. They are putting out interest-free loans for people to put energy, develop local energy solutions. I get asked a lot about microgrids because there's a lot of conversation. Microgrids are equated with reliability and maintaining uptime. That's all in play in this conversation. I don't want to conflate that with the current responsibilities of the distribution utilities to maintain the uptime of the wires. There are two things
I
there.
understand the low-hanging fruit is the, kind of getting everybody on that,
Right.
that better rate. And
But I think with battery and storage and having more local control can only help that ambition.
I just want to say that your premise that larger, more urban communities have more reliability, at least from my personal experience, I moved up here 8 years ago from Greenwich, Connecticut. And I am now the last house on an NHEC line, the last house. It is so much more reliable here, I cannot believe it.
So, they have more ratepayers though, right, like in bigger cities to do things, do more exotic, reliability stuff. So, that's why I bring it up. When you're in a sparsely populated area, what you can do, you're limited,
Yeah, one of the things that, I think, we are talking about the future, but I think that by having community power, we will be able to influence the utilities in some way, and also, like Andrew says, we have these reserves that we can use for projects that, again, it's out there. It's not, again, and the town would have to decide, this is how we wanna use our reserves for our, this is a project that we wanna do for our town. Again, that's down the road, but those are possible.
Could I read from your own energy aggregation?
Go
At Lyme Community Power Objectives, the sixth bullet, community resilience. Support local contractor training and education programs to lower barriers to the installation of new clean energy technologies and support projects such as backup power supplies, efficient electric vehicle charging networks, and community microgrids on critical facilities. That is
Part of the plan.
part of the plan.
And it would also be useful to be a little more proactive about tree work in a rural community like this. A lot of our lines are brought down by trees falling, and sometimes those trees don't get fixed until after they've broken the wires.
Well, I think Jim said he's not coming out to fix the lines, but he's gonna be up trees soaring away all summer.
Thank you very, very much to
Yeah.
all the work the community and the
Yeah.
committee has done.
We're excited about it, we hope that the town adopts it, and thank you for coming out.
Yes, thank you for
I
coming
really
out.
appreciate your attention.
To say,